All right, we're going to launch into this talk tonight. I'm really excited to meet you all. I think it will be a great intimate session, and hopefully I can answer a lot of people's questions. A little bit about me is my name is Caity McKinley. I'm Stanford class of 2021, and I graduated with my bachelor's and master's in the School of Biomedical Engineering and Data Science. And I have now been for 3 years more like 2 years, actually 2.5 years, a interviewer that is a volunteer for Stanford. And so I've interviewed over 50 students that are hoping to get into the institution. And I have had a lot of thoughts around this now being in the educational consulting space. A lot of my research is on ADHD and autism and how educational institutions serve those students. And so my particular eye in this interviewing process for elite institutions is a little bit different than folks who might come from a FANG background. And so I am really excited to share my thoughts today, and we'll head into the core of the seminar. So what we're talking about today is really the introduction to college interviews. And so we'll talk about the importance of college interviews, and we're going to learn how to really make yourself shine in the interview process. And this will be in the context of Stanford, but it's very similar across institutions in the Ivy Leagues or other private liberal arts schools. UCs do not do interviews, and so a lot of state schools don't. And so this will mainly be formulated for private institutions that fall into this elite category. Also, we'll leave some time at the end for this high-level understanding of the college selection process, and also understanding of higher education admissions and some school type specific strategy. It's really important before you head into any of these interviews to do adequate research on the school and really be able to communicate why you yourself, the student, want to go there and why it's a good fit for you. So why do interviews matter in the first place? They add life to your application. Hopefully you already know your application strategy, and your application will stand out of hundreds of thousands of other applications that are in the pile. You know what's unique to yourself. And they provide a personal touch that other than the quantified information that's in your application, like grades or test scores or even essays, it gives the school a little bit in-depth insight into your character as a student. And so with that being said, statistically, if you are offered an interview, and it's especially for your top choice school, you should always opt for an interview. What's great, though, is that schools do not penalize for not taking a interview for an applicant. But, in my personal opinion, when it comes down to someone who they have interview information on and someone who is on that cusp of maybe being accepted or maybe not, it's always great to have that interview. If you're a student that you're a strong shoe-in and you're not super confident about your socialization skills, then maybe that's a different chance that you might want to risk and take. But for most students, the average applicant, an interview is always going to help your cause. When we're framing this conversation with the interviewer, you really want to know some key things. And if you're lucky and if your interviewer is good, they're going to tell you that they don't have these things on you. Interviewers have very limited information. I don't get anything about college essays, test scores, grades. I get a name, I get an email, and I get what region that they applied from and what high school they attended. So I always like to tell students that I personally am working with in this process, it's okay to be loud and proud about the awesome things that you've done up until this point. And it's the first time the interview is hearing it. So talk about it. You're going to find that the focus of the interview is getting to know you as a person and your thought process, what makes you tick, why are you interested in the school? And so it really is best to try to approach it as an informal chat rather than a formal interview where you need to have things completely prepped. But in this informal chat, you definitely want to be strategic and showcase yourself naturally in the way that you feel like you can be strongest. So I like to frame it as the beginning conversation, the middle of the conversation, and the end of the conversation. So nowadays, a lot of interviewers will provide an interviewee the option to have the interview in person, and they might also offer the interview to be held over Zoom. And so either way, you want to make sure that the number one factor is that you're punctual. Make sure that your Zoom or your online interface is set up set up ahead of time. And if it's selected at a in-person location, make it sure that it's neutral and comfortable, a place that you can have an intimate conversation and make sure you can hear one another well enough. Students always ask, how should I dress? And I think this kind of boils down to the school type that you might be looking at. Stanford cares a lot less about what you wear than, say, an Ivy League. It's just the matter of the school's aesthetic. And I would recommend folks to always dress smart casual. You want to prioritize something that's comforting to you and exudes confidence, but is also not so comfortable that it's just sweatpants. So make sure that you are wearing something that you feel good in, and avoid overly formal attire unless the interviewer specifically prompts you to wear that. I haven't seen anyone show up in a suit lately in the past couple of years, but the first year that I did do interviews, someone did show up in that. And it's not like I docked points from them in any way, but I didn't necessarily give them points either. And it's not something that interviewers are supposed to look at or consider whatsoever. The interviewer is going to introduce themselves, and they're going to talk a little bit about their background. They might talk about their motivations of why they're an interviewer for their specific alma mater. And so what you want to do is make sure that you're prepared to discuss your interests and motivations at length. And if you chart out anything ahead of time, make sure you know the points in which you want to cover during this conversation of the interview. So that's the beginning. The middle of the conversation, or the beginning middle, is really trying to decide if you fit into the university's culture. And so very common themes across elite institutions are intellectual vitality, which is just a fancy way of saying, are you curious? Are you motivated? Are you excited to learn? Do you like being a student? Are you going to take full advantage of the academic offerings the institution has? The depth is something that I think has really changed in the last 10 to 15 years. So historically, people used to think that, oh, if my kid if they're president of the hockey club and they're also an ASB and they're doing an awesome clothing exchange, they're involved in all of these things, they're going to definitely get into a great school. Well, unfortunately, they have found that students who spread themselves too thin and try to have club positions in all of these different areas, instead of focusing on something really in depth, one or two areas really in depth, and becoming excellent in the top echelon in those areas, whether it be sports, music, art, nonprofit, business, you name it. They want to see someone that's been able to execute from freshman, 8th grade, sophomore year, or junior year, but to such a scale that it's really impacted a community. They like that. They like depth over breadth. And the last one is character. So ability to navigate a conversation, propel a conversation forward, be a clear thinker. This doesn't necessarily mean you have to be an extrovert, right? But it means that you shouldn't parse your words, and you need to be someone that is able to clearly articulate what they want out of the interview exchange and what they want out of the college experience. I always think that positive energy and being an engaging speaker during interviews is key. It's really a sales pitch if you think about it. And so you want to make sure that you're sharing personal stories and experiences. You're highlighting what makes you unique beyond grades. And so I briefly touched upon application strategy earlier and how that is related to thinking about within the stack of applications a school gets. They might get thousands of applications that say so-and-so was president of the mathematics or robotics club. So what about your application makes you different? And that's what you really want to focus on. Authenticity is obviously more memorable than statistics. Statistics doesn't hurt. And I am always a fan of a student that is able to weave the line between sharing their accomplishments and being humble. But really, it's quite obvious students who are just saying things to please the ears of interviewers. And so you really want to make sure that you're genuinely interested in the school and conveying that in the conversation. The last point is that's really important by the middle of the conversation is building towards the story narrative you want. How do you want to be perceived in this brief 30, 45-minute or hour-long conversation? And so that is your North Star that you're guiding towards in this interview. By the end of the interview, you want to make sure that you understand the school's culture and values. And this also requires some prep work ahead of time, where you're asked prep work ahead of time, where you are researching the school and thinking about how your interests strategically align with the school's interests. But you're also asking strategic questions during the interview that give you more insight in case you get in. If you get in and then you're thinking about 2 college options, make sure that you use that interview to actually know which one's going to be a better fit for you, right? And so as much as they're interviewing you, you're interviewing them. You want to tailor your responses to align with the university's personality. And so there's so much amazing content across social media channels now, ranging from YouTube to TikTok to Instagram, students covering their lives at these schools. So dig into that a little bit in your free time and make sure you're still being authentic and not just regurgitating what someone else's experience. But make sure that you're aligning with what you want and what you need from your college experience as well. The last part is demonstrating your fit and enthusiasm for the school. And so if you candidly say, hey, Stanford's my first choice, and you're a competitive applicant, I always note that down in my interviewer's notes. And I think it's a fabulous way to communicate what you really want. I'm going to touch upon what crafting a narrative means and building your story narrative. It's almost like a mini experience in branding or marketing within that 30 to 45-minute window that's your interview. So you want to make sure that each answer that you give builds upon the last one. And I'm going to show you a slide after this that more in-depthly covers this. But the first thing that I want you to do is identify 3 key experiences to share. And so I'm actually, after this slide, going to give you a little bit of time to think about which 3 key experiences you want to hit on in your interview. And then make sure that they are reflecting your passions and your strengths, and make these experiences memorable for the interviewer. So I'm going to give a little bit of time to just think about that. And I can also talk about my own experiences that I shared in my college application. I covered that I was a competitive athlete growing up. I trained under Olympic level coaches, and I was recruited to play sports across various D1 schools. And I wasn't sure if I was going to actually continue playing sports at Stanford or not. And so in my application, I had to sell myself as an athlete that could contribute to one of their teams. And I ended up playing for one of their teams. So it was great. And that was a key thing that really highlighted my depth of experience. And I am thankful that I was able to touch upon that. But I know that everyone has been able to do a competitive sport for 10 years by the time they get to the application cycle. So think about what's uniquely you and something that you've dedicated a lot of time to. So when I'm talking about these 3 key areas, this is something that I like to think about. I like to think about identity, action, and impact. So identity, it could be something that's location-based to where you grew up, interest-based, skill-based, family-based, culture-based, whatever is unique to you, whatever has shaped your life. I have a great friend from Stanford who grew up having chronic illness, cystic fibrosis, and they were very active in the community by building a nonprofit around information sharing for this disease. And so you want to make sure that you allow the interviewer a little taste of your life and what motivates you. Then you want to focus on an action and what you've done about it. So why did you see it necessary to act in this way? How did you think about what you've done in the context of reaching other people? What were the steps? What we found colleges really interested in from my own research and working with kids, but also existing in the system, is that colleges are really interested in how students can leverage their networks and build something that affects not just themselves, but their school community and the greater community at large. So especially if you're a sophomore or junior listening to this call, even a freshman, think about the executional piece. What are you going to build on for the next couple years to feature in this type of interview? And if you're a senior, reflect back and think about what you've done and what you were passionate about and how did you action around that. The last thing that you really definitely want to talk about in an interview is any sort of impact that you've had. And so this could be framed as scaling and reach. And this is actually one of my amazing mentees I've had who got into Stanford. She had a nonprofit and she focused on mental health for youth and translating mental health articles and resources into other languages. So after she did that, she decided that she wanted to pursue different conferences and attend different seminars throughout the country and really spread awareness of this. It was extremely impressive. It was all self-driven by her with a little bit of mentoring. And you want to explain the significance of your achievements. And you got to assume that the interviewer might lack context on whatever niche thing or specific thing you've done. So you need to be able to thoroughly explain yourself. And you need to highlight why your experiences are meaningful to you as a person and to the community at large. So I really like to think about these things: identity, action, impact. They're super grounding and similar to the STAR method a little bit in traditional interviewing and jobs. And so it orients someone as a person who cares about social impact and is going to be a positive influence on a campus. The relationship between the interviewer and the interviewee. I wanted to talk a little bit about this because I have found that some students that I've worked with have had interviewers who are much older and interviewers who are much younger. And so these are some things that can apply to any age demographic of interviewer that you have. Of course, you want to avoid coming across as entitled or like you need to go to this school and if you don't get in, it's the last thing that you'll ever regret in your life and your life won't work out. Guarantee you that wherever you end up, if you're a shining star, you'll be a shining star wherever you go, and you'll be able to navigate that system with confidence and ease, and you'll be amazing and you'll do great things. You don't need to attend an elite institution to be able to do great things or elite things. And so you want to come across as someone who is humble, who has had achievements, who has worked hard and used every opportunity allowed to them based off their family demographic. I will tell you that with confidence that if you are a student who's a billionaire, a child of a billionaire or a millionaire or a wealthy individual, and you're a student who's a first-gen student, and you're not provided the same resources, but if you have somewhat similar outcomes in school and are similar types of students, they will probably judge you a little bit more harshly if your parent is affiliated with the school or you had a lot of resources and means to accomplish great things and you didn't do as much as you could have. I say this from experience with friends in the college system applying to grad school. I say this working with students in a certain demographic type who thought they were shoo-ins and they were not. Things have changed. Legacy admissions have most definitely changed the game. And you want to make sure that you are backing up any sort of legacy flavor you have with actual achievable work that's awesome and authentic to what you want to do in the future. You, of course, want to show appreciation for the opportunity and clearly articulate why the school is a good fit for you. You know, I love students that say, hey, when I was considering my college options, I was considering between NYU in the middle of the city, Dartmouth, and Stanford. And I decided that I wanted something that was a little bit of a mix between being out in a rural area and completely being engrossed in a huge America's largest city, right? And so being able to communicate the why behind you apply to the school in the first place is so important because it showcases that you've done research, you care, and you've been able to process what the school experience might be like and say, hey, that actually might be a good fit for me. Now, don't be afraid to ask questions to your interviewer, but this is really your chance to shine. And what I mean by that is I've been in interviews before where over half of the interview, the student decides to ask me questions about my experience at Stanford. And while that shows me that they clearly care about Stanford and what my experience is like, they weren't able to take control of the conversation and move it forward by talking about themselves. I'm not getting evaluated the same way they're getting evaluated during the conversation. So it's really key to be able to digest what you want to say and ask strategic, clear questions to your interviewer about that. And so a specific example is if you're talking about how you are pre-med or you want to be an engineer or you're interested in startups, ask your interviewer targeted questions about the things that you're interested in. I think that in these short conversations, wasting time on questions that are like, what was the housing experience like? Or was the food good? What were your professors like? Those are easy questions to Google and come up with answers. You can look up those ahead of time, right? And so ask questions that, you know, are really unique to the person that you're interviewing with and relevant to what you care about and the experience at the school is my biggest word of advice. Now, before you jump into interviewing with the official person you've been matched with the school, you want to make sure that you're practicing. And I kind of break practicing into 3 different steps. You want to rehearse as much as possible with family and friends, and it can be a range of different types of questions. I always will ask a student to tell me more about a time where they were challenged or things did not turn out the way that they expected. And the reason why I ask that type of question is everyone has to be resilient in life and everyone has to have a little bit of grit. And if you're a student that's only prepped to talk about your achievements and you're not willing to be vulnerable about a time where you messed up or weren't perfect, that tells me that you might not do well in a place where you are bound to struggle or fail. And that's what a elite academic research-based institution is going to almost promise you is you will realize that there's a lot of kids out there who are smart and intense and want to be there just as much as you. And so you have to be able to work through that and have confidence in yourself. And so always prepare an answer about a time where you were challenged or something didn't work out. Good interviewers will ask you about that. When you're rehearsing with family or friends, try to keep it as professional as possible. Time yourself. Don't reflect on your answers immediately. And great tool now is AI. So you could record yourself. You can then prompt AI to say, hey, give me feedback on this based off of this criterion for this institution. And it does a really great job of grading you. So that's a way that you can practice by yourself to improve your delivery. And the last part is familiarize yourself with common interview questions. There's lots of content online, on YouTube, on social media about questions people were asked. Go through them, run through your own answers, and remember that practice only makes excellence, not perfection. So you will, of course, be faced with the jitters, and that's totally fine. I will never judge someone for being nervous. But you also want to make sure that you are clearly articulating through those nerves why you want to be there, what you've done to get here to this point, and why you're excited to go to the school. I really want to focus this session on questions. I can help think about different types of strategies for specific school types. I can talk a little bit about admissions at large, and how admissions officers are assigned a pool of candidates based off location. So you're getting compared to other people in your geographic location, and how you compare to those folks within your school, within your county, within your state, and how those people make selections based off of that. I want to say that I'm here to help in any capacity. I really love the holistic college consulting from early ages of execution. So what is your student going to commit to for their hobby, and how will that aid in the college recruitment process, essay reviews, application strategy, and college selection. Not everyone needs to go to an elite institution. Not everyone's going to thrive in an elite institution. You can still do great, amazing things and have a great, amazing life not getting into one of these schools. And you might even have less debt if you decide to go to a different school. And so I'm really passionate about helping families figure out the best fit for them outside of these brands. And I love executive functioning, getting students from different types of backgrounds into elite schools. It's something that I myself really care about. When you are interviewing at these schools, do not forget to write a thank you note. You'd be surprised how many people don't follow up. And it's just something that I think is worth your time doing, because it takes 2 minutes, and it's closing the loop. And if it doesn't aid you in this college process, it's a good way to gain a skill that will surely help you in college and the workforce afterwards. But I wanted to open up this time to have an intimate conversation. If anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer them, and we can workshop a little bit. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and feel free to put a question in the chat, and we can talk about it together. I'm excited. So if you have any questions, you can react by raising your hand, putting it in the chat, or just speaking out loud at this time. I'm happy to comment on anything that I presented today and any questions that you might have. Any questions? I know that it might be intimidating to ask a question, but no question is a bad question in this sort of setting. So feel free to ask. I'd be happy to provide some insights. I know that a lot of the early decision or early applications are having their interviews right now. And so I've helped a couple students just this week prepping for this. So happy to be a resource if this is where you find yourself at this moment. Hi, Jennifer. Do you have a question?
Hi. Hi, Caitlyn. First, I just want to say thank you so much. I think this was really helpful just watching. I'm a senior right now, so I just submitted early action applications to some of my state schools, and I'm wondering, when interviews do come around, how do you recommend going about the more general tell me about yourself question? I feel like what I'm worried about is either saying too little or saying too much. So what would you say is a good amount of information to be sort of laying out during this first question?
Yeah, I always think that you want to frame where you are calling in from, because you never know if your interview is over Zoom, where a student is located. I interview students all over California. And so when students open up and say, my name is Caitlyn, I'm calling in from the Bay Area. I'm a senior at X high school, where I've been really focused on pursuing high-level physics research, in addition to being on the track team, co-captain for multiple years. I have participated in X conferences. You want to frame it and drive the conversation as a style that I prefer as an interviewer, rather than me asking so many follow-up questions trying to draw information out of a student. But I do think that I always, you don't want to monologue about this for 3 or 5 minutes. Like, time yourself. Yeah, time yourself for like a minute, 2 minutes. Think about how it feels to speak out loud for that long. Record it. See what you actually said in that amount of time. Toss it into AI and say, like, in this intro to myself, is there anything that I should have covered more in depth based off of my profile? Do you have any feedback for me on that? And that should be a really good start to prepping for this. And it's really dependent on how long the interview is, but most of them are 30 to 45 minutes. So you got to be a little bit quick in the beginning.
That sounds great. Thank you. And then I guess, can I ask a follow-up really quick?
Yeah, of course.
So is this the question that interviewers will often use to come up with later questions to ask, or do you guys have a preset sort of list of go-to questions that you tend to go off of?
Yeah, so schools, at least my experience with Stanford, gives you some question ideas, but you don't have to be scientific at all. So for me, with my background, I do like to ask my entire interview cohort the same set of questions, and because it gives me a better baseline to compare people to. And then within that, I allow myself like 2 to 3 follow-up individuated prompt questions. But your interviewer could very well be like, I'm treating this interviewee completely different than this interviewee. It's a little bit of the Wild West, right? And so I think the main objective is, no matter what the interviewer asks, what type of question they ask, you find a way to circle back to the topic and things you want to share about yourself. So if they ask you where you're calling in from, you tell them where you're calling in from, but you also talk about how wherever you're calling in from has shaped you, or what you've been involved in this specific area that you grew up in. Does that make sense?
Yes, that helps so much. Thank you, Caitlyn.
Of course. And you asked very good questions. I have 2 questions in the chat. It looks like, will we receive this presentation and the recording of the presentation? So all my experience with Leland is that it automatically starts recording, and then it downloads and will be sent to you via email. If for some reason that does not happen, I can send my slides to folks, and I hope that will be helpful. I'm glad that people have found this helpful. What are the other new changes you are seeing with the shift away from the SATs? Which AI tools are good for this practice? So this is so hard, where like the past 3 years, they were like, no more standardized tests. Well, a bunch of schools just added the standardized test back. So I think we're finding that statistically, I'm a big statistics nerd. Statistically, it is extremely difficult to compare John in New York, who has a 4.0 and attended a high school with 4,000 people in it, to Carol in California, who also attended a high school with 4,000 people in it and has a 4.0. And now with AI and other things and people hiring people to write essays for them, they found out it was way less equitable to get rid of these tests. even though the tests themselves are not equitable. So a lot of these schools are adding the test back in as a measure to protect themselves from letting people into the school that may not have belonged there, quote, quote. Because a 4.0 in, I don't know, some place might not be different to a 4.0 in another place. And so even though you're statistically compared to the group of students you're with at your school, it's still not the same, because socioeconomic status, geographical location can really play into a lot of different factors. And they want to give anyone that's qualified and use the best of their opportunities provided them a chance to excel at one of these elite institutions, right? For AI tools, so I would say Otter AI allows you to do free recording of your voice and turns it into a transcription that you can download. They have an AI summary tool on there, but I don't think it's that great. So what you do on Otter AI is you record yourself for free, you download the transcript, then you upload it to OpenAI, and you basically say, here's my background, these are the schools I'm applying to, what am I doing well, what do I need to improve on, what should I focus on? And then it spits it out, and it's great. Another tool you can use called Grain Recorder. I don't think that one's free, so I would probably just use Otter AI. You can also use voice memos on your phone, upload voice memos to Otter AI. You have more limited uploads doing this, actually, though, so you might just as well make an Otter AI account and record on there. That's another option to be able to then pop it into Anthropic or OpenAI's model to get some really clear feedback. And that's a great way to practice. There's lots of different tools out there. I think there's even some platforms that are more tailored around work in interviews than school in interviews. Can't remember their names right now, but I just think the simple recording and making a personalized prompt with AI is a great place to start. Good questions. Does anyone have any other questions? I am happy to answer more. Please don't be shy. Like, this is your time. I'm really excited to help in any way. If people don't have more questions, one thing that we could do is in the chat, you can send kind of where you're at in the process. Oh, hi. Oh, you can send where you're at in the process, if you're a senior, if you're a junior, if you're a freshman. And based off of the profile of people here, I can kind of steer some advice, what I would give you if you're early in the process, middle in the process, or an actual senior. I'd be happy to do that as well, if that is helpful. So feel free to pop your year of you or your student in the chat, and I can direct some advice from there or ask your own free-form question. Yes, Jennifer.
Oh, hi. It's nice to see you. I'm a senior in the process. Do you have any sort of advice towards people that are sort of at the end of their college application process, like really close to wrapping it all up?
Yeah, I would say that just make sure that you are crafting something that is very clear and coherent, and building a picture of Jennifer, the main character, in your essays,
Okay.
in your interviews. You are the main character in all these situations. And so tie in all the details that make you so uniquely and awesomely you. And I think that, as a senior, it is more nerve-wracking to think about these things because you're in the present moment, right? But I'm sure that as a junior and a sophomore, if you're here today in this conversation, you've been thinking about it, right? And so use the wisdom of your past self and what you thought about during sophomore year, during junior year, to help guide your present self in the selection process of the schools that you apply to, and also how you want to present yourself in the application, right?
Okay.
I would say that there's tropes in which students use to think about their applications, like the pre-med student that researched and volunteered and did all that stuff, right? Like that's a trope. There's a robotics person, like tropes are good and they're also bad because everyone else is using a trope as well. And so how do you clearly communicate the type of student you are while also remaining yourself, uniquely you, Jennifer, is the puzzle piece that you have to figure out. And so I'm sure you're doing a great job.
Thank you, Caitlin. I might hop off camera now.
Okay, good job. I think I saw one more.
Thank you.
Finishing up some prerequisites, then going to apply to a master's program. So master's programs kind of have a similar approach to interviewing if there's an interview for a master's program. And so you want to really make sure when interviewing for master's programs that you're highlighting any sort of experience that you've gained and to make the decision on why you're pursuing a master's. So whether that be work experience, research experience, exposure to a certain topic or subject, or knowing that the master's is going to be able to then put you in the type of career field that you want to do, make sure that you're focusing on the why there. Like, why are you choosing to do extra school that is now no longer mandated, right? College is bachelor's degree is a little different because we've pushed that most people need to do bachelor's degrees. Not everyone does a master's degree. So make sure that you really focus on the why of that, and you'll do great as well. Are there any other questions that people might want to run by someone who can offer perspective? I'd be happy to help. Well, I just want to say that if you need someone to take a look at essays, to prep for interviews, to help figure out the right types of colleges to apply to work on executive functioning skills, to think about one area that I'm super passionate about is neurodiversity. If you want to think about how to maximize the happiness in your life, that's something that I really like working with folks on, as well as thinking about careers in product management. And so if you have any inkling of questions in any of those areas I just listed, please message me. I'm happy to talk to you again, and we can figure out a plan for you. If there's no other questions, then we can all hop off tonight, but I'll stay around till 7:20 if anyone wants to talk and have some more questions answered. Yes, the version of the event recorded. I believe that, to my understanding, Leland always will start automatically recording based off my previous experience doing these. But if for some reason it is not recorded, and when it is recorded, it is automatically sent to you to your email. And so if we don't get that, what I will do is I will send the slides that you can look through, and I'll add some notes to the slides so that it's thorough. But I'm fairly certain that this session is being recorded based off of what's in the top left-hand corner. It does say it's being recorded, and then it's automatically disseminated to all of the emails that signed up for the session. And then after this one ends, I'm actually hosting another free event on just the college selection process. So trying to think about the school types that are good for you. I'm hosting that, I believe, December 5th, or that first week in December after Thanksgiving week. And so if that might be useful to you, sign up for that as well, and I'll see you there. I hope that you all have a great night. Know that wherever you end up is going to be the best place for you. And if you have any other questions, throw them in the chat or raise your hand. And if not, then I'll see you all later. Good luck, everyone. You're all awesome. Don't forget that you'll end up in the right place for you. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Did you have a question you wanted to ask? Thank you. Let me know if you have a question. Otherwise, I'm going to hop off. All right. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.